The following program is paid for by Absolute Mortgage, a division of Finance of America Mortgage LLC, Equal Housing Lender, NMLS 1071, AZBK 0910184. Tina Mitchell, MLO 145420, is a licensed loan originator with Absolute Mortgage. Visit AbsoluteLoans.com or call 888-90-HOMES for cost information. You're listening to The Money Hour with your host, Tina Mitchell, sponsored by Absolute Mortgage, a division of Finance of America Mortgage. Now, in the studio, local mortgage and finance expert, Tina Mitchell.
Welcome to the Money Hour at 11:50 a.m. KKNW, the Saturday, April 23rd show. I am your host and mortgage expert, Tina Mitchell. I am dedicated to my listeners, providing you with tools needed to make informed decisions on all matters that affect your money. If you're hearing my show at a different time or day, you are listening to a rebroadcast, but I'm here to answer any questions or connect you with the guests that I have in studio today. Please call the show at 1-855-400-1150. Again, that's 1-855-400-1150 or online at themoneyhour.com. And the lineup for today's show. Back again, Erik Tinglum with Skyline Properties, Trident Realty Group Northwest. What's up on the south end in the real estate market? That's a conversation I'm going to be having with Erik today. Also in studio, I have Susan Larson and Roberta Stennes. First times that I've had a conversation with the two of them. Excited for that. Both with RE/MAX Northwest Realtors. More advice on navigating through today's real estate market. But what's up in the Seattle and East Side area? Great information and great guest in studio today. For more information on any of the topics discussed or topics you'd like to hear on future shows, please call the show at 1-855-400-1150. Again, that's 1-855-400-1150 or online at themoneyhour.com. And let's start the show out today with a little money chat.
Money.
Property tax, frequently asked questions. There are a few things in life that are certain as taxes, especially when it comes to buying, selling, and owning real estate. Today, I want to break down when taxes are due, when they may be paid, and how they're calculated. What tax relief programs are available that you might have access to. Property taxes have a timeline that are different than most other taxes or bills that we pay. Taxes are due twice a year, both towards the middle of each cycle. So first half taxes are due at the end of April and cover for January through June. And second half taxes are due at the end of October and cover July through December. Now, King County mails out their statement in the middle of February, actually on February 14th, so happy Valentine's Day. That's when you get your property tax statement or when it's been mailed. Now, property tax proration. Because taxes are due towards the middle of the tax period that they cover, a real estate seller may receive a refund or a probate taxes depending on the closing date. For an example, a sale that closes in March will have both parties paying prorated taxes. The seller pays from January 1st to the date of closing, and the buyer pays from closing date to June 30th. A closing that happens in May would give the seller a refund for prorated taxes from the closing date to the end of June, since the seller would not have, since they paid the taxes in April for the entire first half tax year. Can property taxes be paid in advance? Yes. The second half tax year can be paid in advance, but not the first half. Washington state law doesn't allow the county treasurer to collect property taxes until February 15th of the year that they are due. So the first half is typically payable anytime between February 15th and April 30th. And the second half is typically payable anytime between February 15th and October 31st. It is not necessary to have a tax statement to mail in with your payment. So if you decide to mail in the payment without a tax statement, you must write your tax account number on the check. Mailed payments must be postmarked on or before the due date. Otherwise, they're going to be considered late. Now, how are property taxes calculated? The property tax for a given parcel are based on the fairly simple calculation. Multiply the total assessed or taxed value of the parcel by the levy rate for the parcel's neighborhood. In addition, there can be fees added by the county to cover specific services. Now, assessed value and levy rate. The two factors are used to calculate in taxes are assessed value of the property and the levy rate for that area. Now, levy rates are represented in dollars per thousand. So to calculate the tax amount, multiply the assessed value by the levy rate and divide by 1,000. So last year's assessed value times this year's levy rate equal tax amount due. Now, what determines the levy rate? The levy rates are determined by a number of factors, including the results of the voters' approved levy, so pay attention to those. Property taxes usually aren't certified until the middle of February, even though the assessments were mailed out the previous year, which often causes some confusion. In other words, assessment value stated a statement that you get in the second half of this year has no effect on taxes that you pay this year. The valuation will be used in the calculation for the next year's taxes. So you won't know your actual tax that will need to be paid for the year until the county certifies that year's taxes in the middle of February, even though that year's assessed values have been available for months. Now, assessed value versus taxable value. The assessed value typically is the same as a taxable value, except in cases where the taxpayer has applied for and received an exemption. For example, senior and disabled property owners may qualify for tax reductions. In some cases, home improvements may qualify for a 3-year exemption for taxes on the value of the improvement. Now, what tax relief programs are available? We have an open space classification of agriculture land, timber lake, and natural preserves. Also designated forest land classified for timber lake parcels 20 acres or more. Historical restoration exemptions for historical significant property undergoing restoration. Improvement exception. This is single-family dwellings with temporary exemption on valuation of additions to single-family dwellings. Destroyed property claim adjustment to the valuation of destroyed property. Also, there's property tax exemptions for senior citizens and disabled persons. Now, it's important a lot of times I've noticed that senior citizens don't know that they have this. You can actually go back 3 years if for some reason you missed it. Further back than that, you've missed out on this. So you want to make sure you check into that and see if your income qualifies. Full tax deferrals for senior citizens and disabled persons. There's also exemptions for qualified property owners by nonprofit organizations, and last, property tax deferral for those with limited income. So make sure you look into those and you're not missing any of these tax relief programs. Now, property tax resources for King, Pierce, and Snohomish County, you can call the assessor treasurer hotline. You can go online for tax parcel account information or number, see or print a tax statement, and you can make online payments, which they've made that really easy to collect payments for your property taxes. So just a little bit of a background and breakdown of property taxes. Coming up next in the Money Hour, here to discuss today's real estate market and what's up in the South End market, my South End expert here, Erik Tinglum with Skyline Properties, Trident Realty Group Northwest, right here at 11:50 a.m. KKNW after the short break.
When I was little, I didn't talk for a long time. I was sensitive to lights and sounds, so I'd build secret hiding places where they couldn't get in. Sometimes I'd do the same things over and over, until one day I found out I had autism. My family got me help. Slowly, I learned how to live with it better.
Early intervention can make a lifetime of difference. Learn the signs at autismspeaks.org/signs. Brought to you by Autism Speaks and the Ad Council.
They'll challenge your authority. They'll try to break your will. They'll push you to the edge of your sanity. Because that's what kids do. But this car is your territory, not theirs. Defend it. Who makes the payments? Who cleans it? Who drives it? You do. That's who. And in here, your word is law. So when you say you won't move until everyone's buckled up, you won't budge an inch. Until you hear that click. Never give up until they buckle up. A message from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council. For more information, visit safercar.gov/kidsbuckleup.
You're listening to The Money Hour with your host, Tina Mitchell. Sponsored by Absolute Mortgage, a division of Pinnacle Capital Mortgage Corporation. Now, in the studio, local mortgage and finance expert, Tina Mitchell.
Welcome back to the Money Hour with your host and mortgage expert, Tina Mitchell, right here on 1150 AM KKNW, the Saturday, April 23rd show. I build a network of elite industry professionals every week, sharing their knowledge and expertise to my listeners. If you're hearing my show at a different time or day, you are listening to a broadcast or rebroadcast, but you can call the show at 1-855-400-1150. Again, that's 1-855-400-1150 or online at themoneyhour.com. In studio right now, Erik Tinglum with Skyline Properties, Trident Realty Group Northwest, and he is my expert on everything that's happening in the South End real estate market. Erik, thank you so much for coming back in studio.
I always enjoy being here, Tina.
And I love giving an update on the South End, being that I work mainly in the Seattle and the Bellevue area, so it's fun to hear what's going on. A little bit about Erik. Erik has 25 years in the industry and president of Trident Realty Group Northwest with a team of 5 agents and in the top 3% in transaction volume in Pierce County. Retired USAF and Reserve with over 37 years of service. Thank you, Erik.
My pleasure.
Former high school football coach spanning the last 20 years. 75% of Erik's business is working with both retired vets and active duty military around the Puget Sound area. So, Erik, in starting out my conversation with you today, it's a little frustrating and a little sad that middle class and retirees are getting priced out of the King County market with double-digit price increases. Are you seeing that happen over on the South End as well?
It's just starting. You know, we always have lagged King County. We've always been reactive to what's going on up here.
Which is kind of good because you know what's coming, right?
Well, I guess, unless you want to bail ship before it gets there.
There you go.
No, I was talking to our other guests here today when we were waiting for you, and there were numbers out today, just published today, that prices have increased in King County 17% over the high watermark in 2007. And that came from Realtor.com. Wow. So 17% over the high watermark. That's after the huge devaluation after 2007. So you can imagine what the last 12 months have been. I pulled up stats the other day, and King County has about just slightly under 1 month of inventory as an absorption rate. We're just slightly better at about 1.5, where 6 months ago we were probably 2.8, 2.9.
Yeah.
So we are continually in multiple offer situations now. It's something that, of course, you guys have been dealing with up here for a long time. Yeah.
And so when did the multiple offers really start hitting your market?
Well, curiously, I think it's just now really starting to come to full bloom, and I don't think it's even close to being where it's going to be ultimately.
Yeah, if you're not hitting 20 offers on a property yet.
Actually, today we had one of my team members had an offer on a beautiful home in an area called Rodesco in Puyallup, and $400,000, which down there you put that home in Mill Creek and it's $750.
Yes.
And we came in very strong, and we were above asking price, and yada yada yada, and a full cash offer at about 120% of list came in. Wow. And of course, what are you going to do? It's hard to compete against something like that.
Now, are you guys, because we always have a challenge here in our market with getting VA offers, the veterans loan accepted, which is so unfortunate. But in your arena where you have a lot of veterans, are you having issues with government backed mortgages? Or
absolutely.
There's no difference.
No, there's absolutely no difference. Let me just back up. Pierce County is always going to be, along with Kitsap, with Bangor, we have JBLM. What's hard to believe sometimes, revelatory for many people, is that the largest source of income in Pierce County is not active duty military with McCord and Fort Lewis. It's actually retired, like me, military, and we represent about 2% more. So the preponderance of veterans, on a per capita basis in Pierce County is huge.
So you've got a lot more coming in and making
A lot
VA
more.
offers. Whereas for here, we don't see a lot of them. So when you do, it's hard to compete against all those conventional offers.
So the competition, just to be clear, is called
Okay.
the gentrification of King County.
Yep.
Where the middle class is being pushed out, retirees. I mean, people my age, Boeing employee that bought that Wallingford Ballard home for $57,000 back in 1978 has raised a whole family there, and they're getting ready to retire. They just sold it for $725,000, and they still want to stay in contact with the family and the kids. So Pierce County, Snohomish, Kitsap, some cases on the other side of the mountain makes a very good alternative.
Yeah. So, Erik, more affordable housing and coming with cash and going to the north, south, east, and west King County. Why spend the cash with the historical low interest rates?
Well, that's a matter of fact, your
You
guests
guys,
and I were having
had
that
this
same
whole show
question.
conversation before I got here.
Actually, I don't know why, and I would almost defer
Me
that
neither.
question to you because
no.
if I've got cash, I'm not giving it to putting it into the equity of a home that I'll never see.
Yeah, and I think it is a good question. And when you really look at the cost of the interest rate after the deduction of home ownership, but I think a lot of people are just going in because they want to win the property and win that offer. But no, I don't think it makes any sense to get your cash stuck in a home when you can borrow money at such a low rate. Multiple offers with escalation clauses. You say, and I really like this, if you want to sleep on it, you won't sleep in it. So
that's an amen and a half.
It is.
And unfortunately, you can tell your client those things, but oftentimes until they've been burnt a couple times, they still are listening to Aunt Ruth and their friend, Bob and then comes reality.
Yes.
And with so little inventory. Matter of fact, I would be interested to see what your guests think in the next part of the show as to why we're not seeing more people step up and sell. It's a seller's market.
Yep.
And yet they're just not going.
So what would one thing that I see, and I hear from my buyers that are, because they come to me to talk about financing when I've worked with them before, sometimes before they talk with a realtor, which is the way you should do it. But and they're afraid. They're afraid of selling their house and not being able to get another one. So I know that's one issue. What other things are you seeing with your sellers and why they're hesitant to put their home on the market when it's such a great time to sell?
Well, you use the word fear.
Yes.
And I think that's spot on. But I think the term fear should be broadened.
Okay.
We're in an election year that's been vitriolic at best. And we take a look at all of the innuendos that have gone back and forth. And, there's a sense that, I think I'm just okay. Now, having said that, our team, this past quarter probably have had 5 multi-generational purchases that were not ethnically driven. Now, historically, we think of multi-generational as being maybe in the Asian community, the Ukrainian community, but we're seeing moms and dads and brothers and sisters, buying homes together. And I think we
saw that when the market crashed.
Exactly.
It's kind of like right back to interesting.
Exactly. Yep.
So, Erik, I was talking with a contractor a couple days ago, and it was an interesting conversation because he was saying that, he's having to turn a lot of jobs down. I think they should embrace their strengths and hire a team so they can get more work. But anyways, that's a whole nother conversation. And he's saying that they're, a lot of their realtor partners, it's getting stressful for them because they have these long-term, long-lasting real estate agent partners, and they can't take these jobs on to get the properties ready to sell for the seller because they're too small of jobs. And what they're doing is they're taking the big jobs of the people that aren't selling, that are putting $100,000 in a remodel or upgrade to their home so they don't have to sell. So we're seeing a lot of people staying and making their home their dream home instead of getting out into the market.
To support that, buy Lowe's and Home Depot.
Okay. Yeah, there you go.
Just take a look at what their stocks have done in the last year. I was listening to that actually on the radio the other day. And the comment was that people are reinvesting in their homes.
Yes.
And actually, when you think about it, that probably makes a lot of sense for a lot of reasons for a long time, as opposed to. But see, here's the challenge, Tina. The dynamics that bring along, that are married to home sales, are still in place.
Oh, of course.
I mean, we had a new baby.
Yes.
Or we just got a baby.
Yes.
Just got a raise.
Yep.
Just got a divorce.
Yep.
Illness. I hate the Northwest. I'm finally going to Arizona.
Yeah.
Those things don't seem to be playing in statistically, perhaps the way they have in the last 15, 20 years.
Yeah. So what are we going to do, Eric? Absorption rate of 1.68 months, you said, total inventory of Pierce County.
Yeah, and matter of fact, that's up even slightly. But, as you know, we would anticipate that as we get closer to May and June, we'd start to see the inventory numbers come up.
Yes.
We simply haven't.
Yeah.
So again, it's going to be a real interesting summer, and our team is working on a regular basis. Matter of fact, we just had a good team meeting today about how to combat some of these particular situations when we're on the buyer side and then when we're on the seller side. Now, remember, on the seller side, we still, in many cases down south, if you're getting a conventional offer, you only have to, obviously appraise for the amount that you're financing.
Yes,
well, when we're still seeing FHA and VA, we're still up against appraisal issues.
So what are you? And that's a question I didn't have that I was going to ask you today. But since we're heading that direction, I'd really like you to share with our listeners is, what's happening, and because I know we've had appraisal issues that are starting to pop up. And here's something I was just talking with an underwriter, and it made a lot of sense, but things that, you really don't think about until you're in that market. A new comp becomes available on the market. So appraisers have to come up with comparables, as you know, but sharing with my listeners to support the value. You've got to have the comps to support the value. Yeah. And a new comp comes up on the market, but, it's 2 weeks into the closing or whatever, and that comparable actually doesn't represent what the market was at the time that offer was accepted 2 weeks ago, because the market's moving so quickly. And I mean, it's up to an appraiser and what they're doing with the value, but it was interesting to hear on, and I thought, wow, the market is moving so quick that so what dynamics are you seeing with the low appraisals?
Well, we've only really experienced the low appraisals, to be brutally honest with you, and with the VA. Yeah. Now I've had a few that we've come in well above. Yeah. But that's the exception as opposed to the rule. Yeah. Now, having said that, those VA appraisers aren't there to to deny home ownership to the veteran who justly deserves
of course not.
that opportunity.
Of course not.
I mean, land of the free because of the brave.
Yeah.
Having said that, though, they can't pull something out of thin air that just isn't there. And there are a lot of different modalities, as you're aware, to to come up with a number. Yeah. But if you're in a PUD, a planned unit development, where you have 700 houses, I dare say that you better be able to pull one or two out of that area that's going to support the value, regardless of the overall market and the speed at which it's escalating. And
here's something too, Eric, that I heard that was surprising. I was at the Women's Council of Realtors, have some great speakers that came in, and a few months ago they had Alan Pope, which you've well-known appraiser, and some of the things that he said was really shocking. But one of the things that was shocking, and I had never even thought about, it's kind of like those bad aha moments. And he says, here's the issue that appraisers have with VA or with lower down payments, even like a conventional 5% down payment, when all of the other offers, let's say you've got 10 offers and all the other offers, 9 offers, are all 20, 30% down, and you've got this one VA or this one conventional or FHA, a low down payment loan that comes in, and they're paying a higher price because you would think that buyer might be willing to pay a higher price because they know they're competing against all of these higher down payment. The appraiser says that that's an issue in supporting their value if there's no comparable. So it's hard to comp, because here's what he said, is that buyer is feeling forced to pay more than the home is worth because he's competing against the people that are coming with the larger down payment. And I thought, my gosh, that's just unreal.
Tina, that is so totally true. I mean, I wasn't going to get into that argument because I think it's sometimes confusing for the audience to do the math that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. Yep. But that's the truth. And my argument has been to the appraiser, this is a market. Yep. Fair market value is what I'm willing to pay.
Yes.
And if my buyer is qualified, with the new maximums here in King and Pierce County, we can go to $540. Yeah. If my guy is willing to put in another $35,000, $40,000, $50,000, how dare you suggest to a veteran that he can't do that, he or she cannot do that, and therefore, win that battle.
It's the market value. Value.
And
the market is more than one person, though.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I know. And see, this is it's a frustrating thing because I can understand, obviously where the seller and the buyer and the realtor and the lender and the appraiser are coming from. Everybody wants to make the deal work for the most part. The appraiser is on our side, but they've got such challenges out there. And I've had a few low appraisals. I've, been very, fortunate. But there are a lot of buyers in our market that are coming in and saying that they'd be willing to pay $30,000 more than the value comes in at. I mean, there's some crazy stuff going on like that. But it's definitely a dynamic that's hard to deal with through this process. But I don't know how it's going to get better until, things slow down a little bit.
Well, we had a situation not that long ago that was just, talk about a blessing. We had a client through the Wounded Warrior Battalion, the transition battalion, that's 100% disabled, PTSD. And the sellers were retired military. Yep. And without giving away numbers, we came in less, but he was able to find out that the challenges that this soldier had undergone, and in this particular case, he showed deferential treatment.
Okay.
Preferential treatment to my buyer, and I mean, I can't tell you how awesome it was that we were able to secure the home for that vet. Yeah, that was great.
That's great, Erik. Let's talk about more people looking for buildable property, manufactured homes, land. Can you talk a little bit on that?
Yeah, I think. I just found out that there's actually, and I don't know why I didn't know this, there's a category of homes that people are, and then I went online, it blew me away, that are taking old cans, transportation containers, and they're modifying them into homes, and it's actually financeable. Yeah, I got to hook you up on that one.
Financeable? Who's financing them?
Wait till you see.
Really?
I mean, it just blew me away. But we all of a sudden we've had this flurry of people that are looking for land because, D.R. Horton, Lennar, Richmond, America, I mean, they can only build so fast.
Yeah. Well, you guys have land.
And we have land. So all of a sudden,
we don't have any.
Here in the last 3 weeks, we've got people wanting 2, 4, 5, 7 acres. And, I'm thinking equestrian property, owning horses myself. I'm thinking, no, we just want to hide out. I'm thinking, okay, well, but it's happening with increased frequency. Yeah. And I think it only makes sense that with the lack of inventory, we're going to see people looking for many kinds of alternative options.
So on a positive side of everything that's happening in our market and what's going on in the South End market, obviously great time for sellers to get their home on the market. Is finding another place and being strategic in that process. Are you seeing contingent offers coming together in your market, or not too much?
Not too much, although we accepted a contingent offer the other day, but ironically it was 10 days. I looked at the contingent property out of Neenamclaw, 1,700 square feet, and there was going to be a bidding war. So I just told my seller, I said, hey, that's going to be under contract in a minute and 30 seconds, and so let's accept it. It was a strong offer. And actually it was a VA offer, but again, coming in with $90,000 in cash. I don't know what that was all about.
Yeah, crazy.
He wasn't listening to me.
Yeah. So listening to you, what advice would you give to your buyers right now, Erik?
Well, again, you mentioned, if you're going to sleep on it, you're not sleeping in it. And if it's good, it's gone.
Yeah.
And so therefore,
be ready to jump out
you
there.
have to be ready, and you have to be fully underwritten. And I'd like you to maybe even talk to that, because if you're not fully underwritten, and by the way, we're including paperwork to corroborate that very fact, that when we submit that offer, we're underwritten.
Yes.
I mean, you might as well have a check.
Yes.
Wheelbarrow with money.
Yep.
We're that good, and we can close fast.
Yes.
That's what
now,
we're doing.
and a little disclosure on that. Yes, completely underwritten, not just a desktop underwriting review, but also to keep in mind, regardless of completely underwriting, I always tell clients there are 5 critical tips to a pre-approval, and it doesn't matter what lender. If you hear, I won't mention any names, but there's a lender on TV that you're underwritten, you're approved. You look at their pre-approval letter, there's a disclosure right down at the bottom. Everything has to be verified and updated. So it's a sense security. What the industry talks about is just going through a pre-qualification versus a complete pre-approval. But even with an underwriting approval, 5 critical tips are employment, income, liabilities, credit, and assets. So if there's any changes, an example, if you quit your job, you're not going to get a mortgage. I mean, so those things are getting verified. If you say your down payment is coming from a bonus from your employer, and the down payment actually comes from a loan that you borrowed from your credit card, you've got an issue. So you have to keep in mind, even though you have a full underwriting approval, every lender, government sets up the guidelines. Lenders can't make up their own rules. Employment, income, liabilities, credit, and assets have to be verified up until closing. So just remember not to make any financial changes without connecting with your lender first to make sure it's not going to affect the pre-approval.
So let me just ask you a brief question.
Yes.
If, in fact, I'm sending you one of my clients,
yes,
and you have gone through that process,
yes,
how much time then do you generally need to close a loan versus not having any of that done, or having, say, half of?
Yeah, good question. It's, you should be able to close a loan in 30 days. I know with all the TRID and stuff, there's some, extra days that could come in there. But, a strong 30-day close, things can close less than that, just causes some, challenges. Underwritten or not underwritten, you can add an extra 10, 15 days to that if you're not going through underwriting, if they're not prepared with all of their documentation. So it's, it just depends on the preparation that the client has in moving forward, providing tax returns, paper trail for their assets, and, all of those things that come in.
Well, one other thing, and I just want to thank you, because the couple, 2-3 transactions that we've had of late, your staff does a great job of keeping me informed on how my client's doing.
Yes.
So that as a buyer's agent, our team can intervene on your behalf to help assist that buyer in obtaining those documents, or seeing that those documents are transported to you in a timely manner.
Yeah.
So then it's a collaborative effort trying to work with that
Thanks,
individual.
Eric.
So
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah. And for all you buyers out there, just from the lending advice to you, just remember, we're all in this as a team. Your realtor, your lender, and you as a buyer. We're all aiming for the same goal, which is to close the mortgage and have an easy process. The reality of getting a mortgage is not easy because of the documentation. It's not the lender, it's the government that sets up the rules and how lending is. Thank goodness there have been some changes, because we definitely do not want another financial meltdown. So whenever you get frustrated at the fact that you've got to turn in those full tax returns, including all the schedules, or you've got a paper trail, that cash to close, just remember it's protecting all of us to make sure that we don't have a crisis like we did last time. So
Amen.
Thank you, Eric, for coming in. I appreciate always having the chance to chat with you and sharing your wealth of information with my listeners.
And thank you, Tina.
Coming up next to the Money Hour, don't miss out on your dream of home ownership because you missed the opportunity available in today's real estate market. Now we're going to switch over to the Seattle, Bellevue, King County area with my experts, Susan Larson and Roberta Stennes with RE/MAX Northwest Realtors, right here on 1150 AM KKNW after the short break.
It may be hard to believe, but people just like you are already saving money. FeedThePig.org makes it easy. Their simple savings plan teaches you how to start saving without going overboard. So you don't need to mooch off your friends.
You gonna finish that grape?
You mean the one in my mouth?
You don't need to stop buying the necessities.
What you're smelling is a natural musk.
Ew.
You don't need to be a medical test subject.
How do you feel? Mostly okay. Sometimes, though.
You don't need to get a second job as a stuntman.
We need a new stuntman. Let's break for lunch.
You just need an internet connection. Don't get left behind. Start your personal savings plan with the tips and tools on feedthepig.org. That way, you don't need to sell your soul to the devil.
$15 is the best I can do.
All right, deal.
Brought to you by the American Institute of CPAs and the Ad Council.
You're listening to The Money Hour with your host, Tina Mitchell. Sponsored by Absolute Mortgage, a division of Pinnacle Capital Mortgage Corporation. Now, in the studio, local mortgage and finance expert, Tina Mitchell.
Welcome back to the Money Hour with your host and mortgage expert, Tina Mitchell, right here on 1150 AM KKNW, the Saturday, April 23rd show. I'm here to empower our community, providing you with opportunities and solutions when it comes to your money. If you're hearing my show at a different time or day, you are listening to a rebroadcast. You can talk with myself or you can talk with the guests that I have in studio. Just call the show number at 1-855. 400-1150, 1-855-400-1150, or online at themoneyhour.com. And right now in studio, Susan Larson and Roberta Stennes with RE/MAX Northwest Realtors. Thanks, you guys, for coming in. First time to have a chance to talk with the two of you.
Thank you. It's fun.
Yeah, thank you, Tina.
And a little bit about Roberta and Susan. Susan Larson has been selling real estate since 2003 and works with buyers and sellers. Specifically, she enjoys working with single women as well as investors. And Roberta has been selling real estate since 1995, and I've been May of 1995, Roberta, so 20 years, right?
Yes.
Working with both buyers and sellers with emphasis in condos, first-time home buyers, senior citizen, and luxury homes. So between the two of them, they pretty much have it all covered. Roberta and Susan have been working together as a team for 9 years and find their clients are better served. They're recipients of Seattle Magazine 5-Star Real Estate Agent Award for the past 5 years, which places them in the top 7% of Seattle area realtors. They consistently receive annual awards from RE/MAX for their competency and skills. Their clients' needs are of the utmost importance to them, and their motto is service you deserve from people you trust. And I'm excited to have a full day today about real estate, and we talked with Erik about what's happening over in the south end, a little bit different than what we see here in the King County area. But what are the important steps that you guys are educating your sellers right now when preparing their home to sell?
Well, first of all, to hire an experienced realtor who they feel is competent and someone who would do a comparative market analysis. It's easy to think my home will sell for this huge amount based on what you read and hear, but we really have to look at what's sold in their area so we know where to price it. And pricing it accurately is still important. And we want to clearly educate our sellers. So we provide them with a lot of information, but we also do a market or a seller's analysis with them so we know what their goals are. So what do they want to achieve? And it's still important that your home looks good, that you stage your home. And it takes some work, like addressing the problems that you kind of overlook as you live in a house. Like there might be a hole in the fence or a leaky faucet, and you just let that go. But you still have to do your household repairs, address the odors of cooking or pets or smoking, tidy up the yard. We tell them, go across the street and look at it through the buyer's eyes.
Yes.
Is the yard mowed and trimmed and looks presentable? Sometimes we just get used to things when we live in them, and so we have to look at it differently. Clean inside and out. Susan is sparkle, 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 clean those windows inside and
Love
out.
it.
Yeah. Front door painted, new hardware, doormat out in front. Remove your clutter, and people don't like that it's called clutter, so now we say edit what you have. You're going to be moving anyway, so start packing.
Yeah.
And if you need to enlist a stager, do that. And we have different levels of expertise of stagers that do a small portion or a large portion. or just use the materials that the seller has. Sometimes they need to paint and get things neutral. And then also during showings, get those pets out of there and be gone. And it's important. Lights, camera, action. Open the drapes, turn on the lights, have some music going.
I love it. And I think a lot of sellers, and you said most important is to have an expert, and an expert that's for many reasons, but two of the key reasons, that somebody that's going to be honest with you about price, and also somebody that takes control of the process to make sure as a seller that you're educated what you need to do, because it's so easy for a seller in this market to feel that they can get a little bit lazier on how their market or how they're preparing their home, when the reality is, yes, your home's going to sell, but the question is the profit that you're going to make on it. So, just asking if they really want to be able to maximize that profit, if that's important to them, then they need to do these things. And the declutter and making it look good, and it's really about what that buyer is going to feel emotionally coming in, and then maybe they're the buyers that are going to be paying the higher price. They're going to be waiving the inspection and doing these things because they really want that home. So connecting on an emotional level. Is that correct?
Right. And their first impression is people are shopping online.
Yes.
And Susan and I hire, as a gift to our sellers, professional photographers. So, we want those pictures to be fabulous.
And that's huge, because if the pictures aren't, and they're just going to delete them, and they may not see that, delete that home and may not see it again. Yeah.
Exactly.
So in this fast market with home selling over the list price, a seller may ask, why bother with the staging?
Well, I was just going to say also on the last question that even though it's a seller's market, we deal with buyers too, and it's amazing how many times buyers will walk away from a house even though there may be only 3 or 4 houses for them to look at because it's not nice enough, or it's not clean, or cleanliness is the most important thing. People can remodel, but nobody wants to move into a filthy house.
Yes.
And staging is really important to get to this question, because if it's a house that's vacant and you walk in and there's nothing in it, it echoes for one thing, and it doesn't feel like home. And I have seen people buy a house because they love the staging.
Yes.
And it makes all the difference in the world. And
because you're connecting with them on an emotional level, right?
Exactly. And our sellers pay for the staging, and even though it may be expensive, if you get really good stagers in there, you're going to make that up threefold in the offers. And it really does make a difference. And especially, it has to be a good stager. It just can't be somebody coming in and throwing a few pillows around, or, put a chair in the corner, which we've seen.
Sure.
And the front door, clean the front door. Drives me crazy when we go into a house and the front door's got paw prints all over it. How hard is it?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like when you sell a car, you're going to get it detailed to make sure that you have that you've got the best look in the interior when they come in. So same thing and again, it's really about just maximizing that price that the seller is going to get for that property. So what should sellers be aware of in the offer process?
Well, there are so many other items to consider besides price. Of course, price is important, but items that indicate how strong the buyer is financially, like how much money are they putting down? The level of their earnest money indicates how committed they are to the process. And also consider their financing contingency, or as you talked about earlier, is it a cash offer? The inspection contingency, the type of loan, and then we always like to shorten up time frames for our buyers and sellers, and so that inspection gets done in a short time frame, and also the final loan approval, and if there's a title review, but also the closing date. We've seen a lot of rent backs to sellers so they can stay there longer, but they've closed, and so that's done, and then of course the escalation clause.
So anything else that you're seeing that are creative for in the offer process?
Yes, but I would like to also say the loan, who's doing the loan is important.
Yes.
And also who the other agent is important.
And I think that is really, I'm so glad that you brought that in, Susan, because as a consumer, so if you're listening right now as a buyer, please make note of this because it's so important. Reputation is everything in these multiple offers because making sure that that offer is going to actually make it through the closing process, because I read a statistic that 30% of mortgages don't close, not close on time. They don't close.
Wow.
And so the reputation of the lender is big, and the other realtor. And why would that be important, Susan? Can you share that with my listeners?
Well, the most important thing in a transaction is that it does close and it closes on time. And if you have a lender that's not local, an online lender, or somebody that's lazy, then it's not going to happen.
Yeah. And what about the realtor? I mean, why is it so important that the realtor that's representing the buyer, that you, as if you were on the listing side representing the seller, why is that dynamic so important? Can you share that with my listeners?
Roberta, do you want to take it?
Sure. Well, agent to agent is really important because we're not competing. We are working as a team to get the job done. And we love working with newer agents or experienced agents, but we want them to be committed to doing their part of their load.
And you guys, you know a lot of that when, again, you represent both buyers and sellers. But when you're representing the seller, you're looking at things completely different than if you're representing the buyer. And you know when that offer is getting presented, on whether that realtor has experience or if they're lazy. I mean, you can see that. So it's really important that through that process that all of that is being done at the highest level. And so as a buyer, making sure that you're working with a real estate expert that has a great reputation can make a difference in that offer getting accepted.
Because some things could fall through the cracks. And if you don't have a really good buyer's agent, then the loan could fall through because they're not keeping tabs with that, and we're all following through the transaction through close. And and if you don't have the communication, then things could go wrong.
Yes. So creative things in offers. Are there anything else that you guys are seeing that you can share for buyers in getting creative when they're putting that offer together?
Well, Roberta mentioned rent backs. That's a good one.
So explain, and your rent back is like a 60-day.
30 or 60 days, and usually you give them 60 days, and it has to be free. They get to live there in that house until it closed, until they find a place to move to.
Okay.
And oftentimes they do that pretty quickly, and then it's not the 60 days. We've had people, escalation clauses, which means you're going to go a certain amount over the next best offer up to a certain amount. Escalation clauses that are a dual escalation clause where you go a certain amount over the next best offer up to a certain amount if it's a loan, contingent on a loan, or if it's contingent, or if it's not contingent on a loan. If you're competing against cash, you may go $20,000 over the cash offer, but only $2,000 over the loan.
So it can get a little tricky in putting those numbers together. And are you seeing, on that note, when we're talking about escalation clauses, because we're starting to see in some strategy on the seller side is coming in with your best, final and best, or what is that? What's the term called? Best and final offer. So they're not allowing the escalation clauses to come in and just having you come in with that best offer right up front.
The problem is they'll say no escalation clauses, and then somebody does use an escalation clause anyway. So typically we use an escalation clause, and then the agent might call us and say, now give us your highest and best.
Now gets the highest and best. Okay, yeah. And I, just even on the simple things is, for a buyer, just allowing the seller to leave all their junk behind. Just making small extra gestures, covering the insurance, the insurance portion, there's something you can do on that. So think about those small things if you're listening as a buyer, and take some advice from our experts that are saying you really do need to do some creative things to get your offer accepted. So let's talk about describing what happens in a multiple offer scenario.
Well, Susan and I actually chart it out with our sellers.
That is awesome.
So we do the initials, the amount, the loan, the percent down, the earnest money, who's the other agent, who's the lender. I mean, we have a massive chart. And so they can look at it across the board and really do a fine comparison. So they can make a wise decision And it is their decision. It's not our decision.
And that's a good point, because a seller may think, well, my agent's just going to tell me what the best offer is, but you can't. I mean, they have to make that decision. You've got to have the information and the way to make it easy for them to understand what the offers are, just like you said.
So we guide them through that process. And I think multiple offers sounds so fun and exciting, and it's not. It's hard work, and it's hard on the sellers as well as the buyers.
Well, I would imagine so, because the sellers are emotionally attached to wanting to make sure that they get the best offer. And when you're looking at 10 offers side by side, that could get overwhelming. Completely makes sense. So what happens during the inspection period?
Well, if it's a multiple offer situation, then people will do a pre-inspection, which means they'll waive their inspection before they actually write the offer. But if they are lucky enough to be the only offer, then they hire an inspector, and that's usually between $400 to $500, and they'll have the inspector tell them what's wrong with the property, and then they can go back to the seller and ask for a reduction in price, or for the seller to fix a few things, or just say everything's fine, I'll just take it as it is. And we always encourage our clients to not ask for little tiny things, a drippy faucet. It's the big stuff. You're really looking to see if the foundation's okay, or there are rats in the attic, or that sort of thing.
And also I was talking with one of my realtors, and you have to be sensitive in how you're addressing the sellers. If you think there's an issue before you've even made the offer, don't bring that up at that time, because you don't want to make the seller nervous about how you're going to respond moving forward. Is that correct? I mean,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, thanks. So, what about the sewer scopes? Is that common that you guys are seeing that right now?
They are becoming more common. It depends on the age of the home, and it's usually done during that same time frame of the inspection period.
Are you seeing that a pre sewer scopes getting?
Certainly.
Yes. Okay. And so after the inspection process, we actually talked about that. And, if they're not doing a pre-inspection, and we're not in the crazy market, there might be some negotiating. Right now, it's kind of slim to none because of the market that we're in. But what about the appraisal process? And so we talked about inspection, the inspection being really being the interior and the details of the property, whereas the appraisal being the value.
Well, if somebody has a loan, then that's when the appraisal happens. If it's all cash, of course, there's no appraisal. So the lender orders the appraisal, and the appraiser goes out, and then they do a report, and hopefully it'll match what the purchase price is. If not, then there's new negotiations. The seller drops the price, the seller gets out of the deal, or they could hire their own appraiser. And now we're seeing people, buyers, saying that they're going to increase the appraisal amount, that if they have extra cash over their down payment, then they'll say, I'll pay up to whatever. Over, if it's a low appraisal, I'll kick in $10,000 or $20,000.
So why are we not seeing yet? And I think it would be a really great idea. Sellers are thinking of doing pre-inspections or doing inspections ahead of listing the home. Why have they not thought of doing an appraisal before they list the home? Not that, appraiser is an opinion of value, but if they can get that opinion of value to support what they're hoping to get for the property, they've got something to show to an appraiser if they did come in low.
Yeah,
Are you guys hearing any conversation about that?
No, I haven't seen anybody do that.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that's because they don't know what they're going to get. The multiple offer situation, it could be $100,000 over what they're listing it at. And if it's just so volatile, I think. You just don't know. You might get $435 for it, or you might get $535. So how can you? And if your appraisal came in at $435, and then you got multiple offers, and it was huge down payment or cash, then good for you.
Yeah. I know, it's just an interesting dynamic with what we have, without a doubt. So title and escrow. Explain a little bit about the title and escrow process for my buyers. Or for my listeners, and for the buyers out there that are listening.
Most people don't realize that title insurance is so different than other insurances. For health insurance example, we buy that for in the future. And title insurance goes back to make sure the property you are buying does not have any liens against it, and that you are buying a property with clean title, with no judgments, no extra fees, and you're buying what you what you think you're getting. There might be easements or encroachments, but you can know about that, and title can repair things, and so you get the home.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's like you would not have insurance, so you would not have title insurance. To wrap things up here, a seller may be listening and thinking, well, gosh, homes are selling. You guys are talking about the whole show with the lack of inventory, and it's such a great market. Why do I need to hire representation to sell my home? Can you please share why they have to do that? They don't want to sell by themselves.
Most for sale by owners leave money on the table. They just do. They love their homes. They put a price on it. Someone comes in and buys it. They don't have the expertise to get it to close.
Yep.
And it just amazes me that someone would even want to try to do it.
Yes.
It's they don't always have a realistic idea of what their house is worth. And we just know that because of our experience, we ultimately will get them more money for their home.
Makes total sense. And you talked about the multiple offers. If they did have those, how are they going to navigate
what would
through
they
the process?
do?
And I think a lot of people don't realize that the work starts when you're listing that home, without a doubt. But the work doesn't end until it closed. So you got a whole nother dynamic of work starts that once the contract is that it is under contract. And there's a lot of things that are happening that you've got to have that experienced realtor representing you, or otherwise there's a big risk of things falling apart.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, thanks you guys so much for coming into studio. It was great having you in for the first time. Look forward to having you back.
Thank you.
This is your host, Tina Mitchell, signing off for the day. Thanks, everyone, for joining me, and I look forward to talking with you same time, same place next weekend right here on 1150 AM KKNW.
The preceding program is paid for by Absolute Mortgage, a division of Finance of America Mortgage LLC, equal housing lender, NMLS 1071, AZBK 0910184. Tina Mitchell, MLO 145420, is a licensed loan originator with Absolute Mortgage. Visit AbsoluteLoans.com or call 888-90-HOMES for cost information.